Hello, fellow book lovers, both readers and writers. I am Matty Dalrymple. I am the author of the Ann Kinnear Suspense Novels and Suspense Shorts and the Lizzy Ballard Thrillers. And I also podcast, speak, write, and consult on the writing craft and the publishing voyage as the indie author. And you can learn more about me at mattydalrymple.com and at theindieauthor.com. And this is my video series, What I Learned, where I ask authors 2 questions related to their latest book. What did they learn from the latest book that they'd like to share with their fellow authors? And what did they learn from the latest book that they'd like to share with their fellow readers? And I am here today with James McCrone. Hey, Jamie, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you very much.
To give our viewers a little bit of background on you, James McCrone is the author of the Faithless Elector series, Faithless Elector, Dark Network, and Emergency Powers, taut and gripping political thrillers about a stolen presidency. He's a member of Mystery Writers of America and the International Association of Crime Writers and president of the Delaware Valley chapter of Sisters in Crime, and he lives in South Philadelphia. And Jamie's latest novel is the thriller Bastard Verdict. So today I'm asking Jamie the 2 What I Learned questions about Bastard Verdict, starting with, what did you learn from the book that you'd like to share with your fellow authors?
I love this series that you're doing, and it forced me to think in a slightly different way. So thank you very much. What I learned, and what I would sort of want to share with other authors, is to trust your instincts, to trust sort of the process. Bastard Verdict is set in Scotland, and I have a good portion of the dialogue is in Scottish. And I worried terribly about that. I worried that, I lived in Scotland as a boy, but I'm not Scottish. I worried that people would think I was appropriating them or trying to belittle. But what I've found is that people have responded incredibly positively to it. It's one of the things that in the reviews on Amazon, Goodreads, and elsewhere, that people have called out, that they said that they were a little worried that maybe the Scottish would be off-putting or difficult, and it's just not. As I said, I was really worried about it. And that's so what I learned in particular then, or relearned, I guess, is maybe a better way of putting it. I approached it with humility, and I sought outside advice, friends of mine in Scotland, and I used a new editor for the book who is Glasgow-based. And as I said, I lived there and I've traveled there extensively. And I hear those discussions in my head. And so I was writing them, but I wanted them checked, basically. And I was constantly like, is this over the top? What am I doing? And the editor was like, no, it's good. It's good. The interesting thing, he came up with one of my favorite books, not actually a mystery, is called Doherty by William McIlvanney. And that when he does Scots in dialogue, there are a lot of like apostrophes within the words. And that was definitely a way of doing it back in the 1970s when that book came out. But my editor this time said, my biggest criticism of what you're doing is you're using the apologizing apostrophe, he called it.
Interesting.
That is, when you're putting in an apostrophe, it's a little bit like in a manuscript when you quote somebody and you write sic, S-I-C, next to it, meaning, I know this is wrong, but this is how it was written. And obviously that's not the way, that's not the look I want. And so that was a great note and a great insight.
What did he recommend in place of the apologizing apostrophe?
Just write the word as it is. And so I just from a writer's perspective, I did leave a few in where, so like when somebody's saying, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to go to the shops, right? You would write that, the I would be A-H. And he said, you don't necessarily, and so what I would do is capitalize A and then H for I. And he would say, you don't need to capitalize the A. But I'd seen it enough in other work, and it actually pushed me to read more broadly. And then, so if it's I'm, right, the contraction, when it is a contraction, I will still leave the apostrophe in there. So that it's not apologizing, but noting that it is indeed an abbreviation in this case. So, trusting your instincts, but also doing the legwork to make sure that you're doing it right if you have misgivings about a particular path you're taking, would be my biggest sort of takeaway there.
Yeah, it makes me think. I'm just rereading Presumed Innocent,
Uh-huh.
which
Oh,
I
right.
think
Yeah.
must have been published in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
And for one of his characters, he'll leave the G off ing words, like
Uh-huh.
I was looking at this, I was doing that. And that's a little weird too. Like, it's very hard to know how
Is
to.
there an apostrophe at the end?
No, there's not the
Uh-huh.
apologizing apostrophe, but I also feel like I get a little bogged down in it.
Ah.
Like, I would be okay having him express at the beginning of introducing that character that the character had a informal way of speaking or something like that. I'm not quite sure how he would get it across, but then I found myself stopping a little bit. Like, it just took me back a little bit because I'd read Lookin, and there was that millisecond where I was going, "Wait, what? Oh, never mind."
Oh, he's not right. He's not looking. Wait, is it look in or?
Yeah,
No, it's true.
very
Where you
difficult.
think, oh, is this a typo?
Yeah.
But yeah. What's nice is that I feel like even if like the first time you encounter it in the story, it's a little like, oh, wait, what? You hear it. You really do hear it. And it does make sense and it does work, even if you haven't lived in Scotland.
Well, here's a question for you that you probably didn't prep for this one, maybe not. Would you ever think about doing an audiobook of a Bastard Verdict? And if so, even if we're just talking about this theoretically,
Yeah.
how would you handle that?
That's a really good question. I would want Ewan McGregor to read it. I mean, if we're just going to go for it, right?
Sure.
Or Brian Cox or, then they could, so that they have sort of a BBC Scotland voice that you hear the accent, but it's not broad Scots, if you will, but that they can certainly, there are varying registers and code switching, if you will, that they could drop in and out of, which I think would probably, be an enormous benefit to the book.
Yeah.
And Ewan McGregor, I think, would be extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ewan, are you out
He
there?
hasn't called, which is odd, but I'm sure he's busy right now. And
We'll flag him on social media so he notices this.
Yeah.
Ewan, please get in touch with James. I'm seeing a whole bit where I'm just going to clip this part out and post it repetitively on social media until he responds to you. Anyhow, I kind of derailed your well thought out conversation about.
Well thought out. Well, all right.
Are there are any other tips you would like to share with your fellow authors before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I'm actually just going over the same ground, but that I believed that the story needed it, that's why I stuck to it. I believe, I really wanted a strong sense of place, and I can describe the weather, I can describe the rain, the cold, or those absolute gifts of sunny days that you have in the British Isles from time to time, and the rhythms and cadence of the spoken language is a big part of that place that I wanted to recreate for the reader.
The other book this is reminding me of is Adrian McKinty's books that are based in Ireland.
Right.
And I think that he doesn't use as much adjustment of the spelling of the words, but he does use the terminology. Like, there's a word for ditch. I forget what it is, but
yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So when you encounter those kinds of words that are completely different, it's not like a differently spelled English word. It's your reminder that, of the location of the story. Is that something that you incorporated or considered or thought about?
Definitely.
How did you handle that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's an excellent point. I don't know that I came up with, I'd have to really think back. I don't think there was anywhere that I used a word that you don't normally use in English, but there's some great ones, obviously, in Scottish, gormless, stupid, or not just stupid, but sort of, anyway.
Clueless, kind of?
Foolish, yeah. That's a better interpretation, I think. What's interesting, because I've read some of, I bought Adrian McKinty's first novel, and I haven't read it yet because my wife appropriated it before I could quite get to it. It was in my TBR pile, and she said, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, I'm good." Oh, okay.
Well, I'll loan you mine until you can get yours back.
Yeah. But
Adrian McKinty,
but
we're all fighting over your books. There's
yeah.
another person we can flag in social media. So let's switch over to what you learned from Bastard Verdict that you'd like to share with your fellow readers.
So I learned, again, I don't know if I learned things or if I relearned them, that things that I should have known and have forgotten or what. But that Bastard Verdict is a political thriller. It's kind of a what if. It's set where there is a potential second referendum on Scottish independence coming, and a group of conspirators need to keep quiet their interference in the first one. So in a lot of what I pitched to people, in a lot of sort of the promotional kinds of materials, I really, I talked about that political aspect. It isn't, that one thing is right and one thing is wrong, one side or the other, so much as this is an attack that what the conspirators have done, is an attack on democratic norms and democracy. And that's what fires up Imogen. But so what I relearned is that characters are far more important to readers than, obviously the setting and the backstory and whatnot, contributes mightily. But that, again, what people are calling out are characters. And that Imogen Traeger, my recurring character, the FBI agent and elections specialist, I've seen a lot of things talking about how much people were thrilled with her, how much they liked her. What was particularly interesting was among the secondary characters. And I had thought, and in a way hoped, that Ewan Johnston, an attorney who becomes an ally of Imogen, I thought that he would be kind of my breakout second fiddle secondary character, and that I modeled a few things in him from myself. He just little things. I don't know what my problem is, but I cannot stay clean. I have just about every just about every shirt I have. If I look closely, I can see like oil or just like that. What I'll do, I'll come home from work and I'll start cooking right away in like my work clothes, and now oil has splattered on my tie or I'll look at my cuffs on the shirt and you'll see I've rolled them up. And it's just, they're fraying and they're kind of a little grimy. I'm like, I just put this on. What is going on? Anyway, and there are a couple other kinds of things like that I took that are basically me and gave them to Ewan. And people are like, but he's not. So everybody loves Alan Wilson, who's another secondary character. And he's sort of a low-level crime syndicate criminal, basically. He's oddly the moral center of this book in many ways. But so I feel, A, odd that I missed that, that he would be, and B, I'm a little slighted. I feel a little slighted, a little annoyed that, no, I'm kidding, obviously.
He's
But
so
what
lovable.
has been lovely is, I did a lot of research for this book. I ran a ton of things by different scholars, constitutional scholars, government people who have been involved in the actual voting process, on polling, on election day and things like that, just to make sure I was getting all this stuff right. And as I began sort of promoting the book and thinking about that, was very much in the front of my mind. And, I know people appreciate that I made sure to get those details right. But obviously their joy is in the characters. Imogen, it's sort of in order, Imogen, Alan, and then somewhere down here, the guy I based on myself a little bit.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
Well, it's a kudos to you for having created characters to create that kind of commitment from the readers, because I've heard that from others who have read the books, that they become very emotionally invested in the characters that you've created.
Well, that's nice. Thanks. Yeah. So that was obviously, when I was writing the book, I wasn't forgetting about characters, but when I came to talk about the books and promote them, I talked about Imogen, obviously, but I didn't go into the characters to the degree that maybe I should have.
Well, I think that that's a great lesson for authors too, because I'd have to say that after several years of news blackout for my mental health, hearing the phrase political thriller isn't necessarily a draw for me, but hearing about the people who are in it is a draw for me. And so, like, everybody loves a good character, and a good character in almost any setting is going to be appealing to people. So I think that one can expand one's pool of potential readers, just like you're saying, by focusing on the characters rather than the details of plot or setting and things like that.
Right. And as I say, I mean, obviously, when I was writing it, I was focusing on multiple things at once: plot, setting, character. But when I came to sort of talk about it, I foregrounded the political aspects. And it's interesting that readers are, well, yeah, but these characters are, really interesting. And
well, I think that's good. I think time-wise, we're at a good point.
Okay.
To wrap up. And I think that in addition to going to Bastard Verdict and looking for the character that's modeled on James, learning a little more about you that way, Jamie, please let people know where they can go to find out more about you and Bastard Verdict and all your books online.
Thanks. The James McCrone, it's with 2 C's, jamesmccrone.com. There's a links page that has, Facebook, Twitter, Mastodon, Instagram, Goodreads, all of those kinds of links. The book is available online through bookshop.org, Amazon. It's available in ebook. And until Ewan McGregor calls, unfortunately, it's not available as an audiobook.
It's just a matter of time.
But of course, that's just a matter of time. Exactly. It's in the works, if you will.
That's so great. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.